Hello and welcome to Vikings Territory Breakdown Podcast. I'm Joe Oberle, senior writer at VikingsTerritory.com, ProPTST.com. That's Mark Craig, NFL insider, Vikings guy from the Star Tribune and StarTribune.com. Folks, it's been a while since we've been on. Apologize for that. We've had some family things and some vacations and really a dead time during the season, so we took a small hiatus, but we're back. We got to do the wind down to training camp, and it's Independence Day week, so go crazy with your fireworks, but don't blow off any fingertips. That's my advice to you. But anyway, we got camp coming up here on the 27th of July, so we got to get set for that. Mark, are you getting fired up now that you're rested and ready and back?
I forgot all the names this morning, but I like starting off with a PSA of public service announcement: go crazy, but don't blow your fingers off. That's like an old school PSA. Yeah, it's been a nice break. It's even the coaches and the I think players for sure, coaches. I think they even closed the building here in July. To get everybody out.
Really?
So the NFL still at least acknowledges that there's 3 weeks where not much is going on. So there's a lot more than 3 weeks where there's not much, but they keep the plates spinning, as we say.
Right.
But yeah, it's nice. And then by the time you start getting into late July, you're like, it's ready for football again,
Yeah, it is. I just quickly step back. I'm honest about that. We grew up doing fireworks at my uncle's farm. My dad would go to Wisconsin and get some fireworks because they don't sell them here in Minnesota. And boy, I remember one. I'm throwing one like this, and it had a quick fuse, and it went off not far after it left my fingers. Boy, they were throbbing and numb for a while. That cured me of fireworks right there, because then that would have taken away my MLB career, blowing off my left hand.
When I moved here, I bought, because I had a young kid, and then another young kid came along a few years later. And when I first got here, I was like, "You sell fireworks? Let me get this straight. You sell fireworks, but they don't leave the ground." I didn't understand that. I did grow up, where you were kind of pointing the bottle rocket at people. Back in the old days, Joe, and we did things like that.
Yeah, the nanny state. There was a kid in my neighborhood who had a dynamite cap and blew off several fingers, and I remember seeing him around, and I just scared me straight. Bring on the nanny state. No lost appendages. So be careful out there, folks. But anyway, we hope somebody that's throwing bombs is old Sam Darnold. How's that for a segue?
Wow, that's good.
So much has come out, since mini camp and stuff. It goes back and forth. Just let me give you a little taste. Sam Darnold is said to have some untapped potential. Then at the other hand, I see a report yesterday, he's going to be traded by the deadline. They're going to get him all jacked up and show him off and then trade him. He's had his career. He's now with a quarterback whisperer. It's all speculation, isn't it, Mark? Or is there something at minicamp that you think stands out, that he's heads and tails and there is no competition there? Because I've heard both. There is no competition. It's over, and it's intense. Who was it? Cam Bynum said he's seeing stuff from both guys. So talk to one person.
Way to go, Cam. That's how you do it.
What's that?
That's how you do it, Cam. You hedge your bets.
That's a good idea. But what do you see? What do you know? Is there any truth, or are we just,
first of all, there's no, that's trying to predict the future. And don't take this the wrong way, Joe, but there are websites that are full-time Vikings, and they need to have content, and it's year round. And not to say that that's not entertaining to read, but he could be traded at the deadline. He could start the whole season and have I'll stretch the truth a little bit here, or my beliefs a little bit, and have a Baker Mayfield type year and suddenly be back in the mix as a starter somewhere else. What I think is going to happen is that they're in a good situation because Sam Darnold, untapped potential. I have a hard time believing potential, but potential could be, if you temper it, could be, hey, he's good enough to get you scrap and get you into the playoffs, 7th seed, whatever, and that's good enough. And then this way you can take your time with JJ McCarthy and groom him. There's nothing wrong with grooming a quarterback, but Sam Darnold's 27 years old now. He's 21-35 as a starter. He's had 6 years in the league, 3 teams.
Wow.
He's been with 3 teams, 2 of them as a starter. They failed as a starter. He was a backup in San Francisco last year, started only 1 game, played only 1 game, was 0-1. So he is what he is at this point, but he is. This is probably be his last time where he heads into at least a training camp as probably the starter. But he's going to have, if I'm Sam Darnold and being realistic about things, you want to play well enough to where you can secure your next 5-6 years as that career backup, that Andy Dalton that's on the bench that can come in, and be a relief starter. And that could be here. He starts a little bit here, and then JJ McCarthy takes over and he becomes JJ's backup. I mean, that's the ideal situation. But if he's lights out and a trade deadline arrives, the Vikings would be kind of foolish to trade him, I guess, but depends on what people are offering.
Yeah.
It's if they're offering something stupid like a 1st-round pick, yeah, I'd trade him if he's having a good year and they're doing surprisingly well. But what I think is going to happen is JJ McCarthy will be the starter sooner than later. Either he really shows O'Connell and everyone that he's ready for it by day 1, or the Vikings don't start as well, and it gets to where, hey, JJ can handle it. He can handle stepping in and all the little, bumps and hiccups and burps that happen when you start as a rookie. So it's a good situation for the Vikings to have. I still would have preferred like a Joe Flacco for $4 million as opposed to, Darnold at $10 million, because, Flacco's 40 years old, I think, but Darnold's not. You're not looking at Darnold as, hey, he might be our starter next year. You're just looking at him as get us competitively through this year. And I think a guy like Joe Flacco could have done that and probably done it better.
Yeah. Well, here's the other side of the coin of that is the guy was taken 10th overall, highest the Vikings have ever drafted a quarterback, I believe. I think that's right. And with that comes all kinds of expectations. And, some Caleb Williams down in Chicago, granted 1st overall, he's going to start. There's other quarterbacks that may start ahead of McCarthy that were selected ahead of him. But there's that expectation there. So if Darnold does start, is it a matter of a disappointment? Is McCarthy a disappointment? Is it just measured JJ or Jordan Love type method of let's groom him, or is it are they finding out that he's not what they thought and hoped he was? I mean, this league is such a short career league. You want to get going with your best guys as soon as possible. If he doesn't start, and I'm being devil's advocate here, is there something wrong with JJ at this point?
No. If he's not the starter on day 1, because there's a big difference between the number 1 overall pick, one of those supposedly generational quarterback. I mean, that he could flop as well. And I'm on record saying here before, I don't have a good feeling about that guy. Could be totally wrong. Could nail it. I don't know. But there's a big difference in expectations from day 1 when you're that number 1 overall pick and you're coming into a team that has, frankly, they basically tanked it for at least a year, and when the GM came in, and they've sort of geared themselves up for it. My dog doesn't like that. And also, JJ's the 4th quarterback taken. He was 10th overall, but he's the 4th quarterback taken.
Right.
Number 8 overall in Atlanta is not going to start. And then as far as the devil's advocate of would it be a failure if he doesn't start on day 1? who has this team been chasing for the past 30 years? They've been chasing the Packers, and the Packers. I'm not saying J.J. McCarthy's going to be Aaron Rodgers. I'm not saying he's going to be Jordan Love. And I'm not saying Jordan Love is going to become Aaron Rodgers. I'm just saying that it's okay to groom a quarterback. It's the Packers are doing it in modern day. But if you look historically, it's, Steve Young was a backup.
Yeah.
Guys didn't always just come in and start on day one. So, it's one of those where if he's not a starter in year two, then panic. But if he's not a starter in year one after one training camp and a handful of preseason games, then no, I would not panic on that at all.
Yeah, that's a great point. How did the 49ers ever get away with that, having two Hall of Fame quarterbacks on the roster? And as soon as one stepped aside, the other one stepped. I know Packers have done it too, but in a different way. I mean, Steve Young sat there underneath Montana for a few years, and all of a sudden, boom, he's just like, wow, you'd think you'd trade an asset like that. That stuff doesn't happen like that.
No, and then Joe goes to Kansas City and leads them to the AFC Championship game and almost goes to the Super Bowl there.
That's amazing.
Yeah, these things happen, and Bill Belichick. If Bill Belichick was always get rid of a guy a year too soon as opposed to a year too late. Well, Tom Brady broke all that mold because he should have hung on to Tom Brady another 3 years.
What do you see out at TCO? Is it an actual quarterback competition, or is it this grooming thing? What do you think is really happening out there? What do they? I mean, is JJ pushing Darnold enough to be better to win that position? Is it already Darnold's, by default, and they're going to groom him? Or is there an actual competition that they're both really trying to get that starting role in week one?
Well, there's a competition there. It's a little bit of both. It's a competition, but it's also a relaxed competition. I would say there's a pecking order. I think in the mini camp, it was Darnold, Mullins, and then JJ. I mean, that it's and who knows? Mullins might end up being the backup, but I'd be stunned if JJ's not active on game day it is definitely just between those two, and that's but we know what Darnold is, and we know that he's not going to just come in and rocket to the top like like an established quarterback who otherwise he wouldn't be available for 1 year, $10 million. So it's a competition / grooming, and the Vikings probably don't even know. There's a lot to be evaluated. I mean, granted, they don't do a hell of a lot in practice, but there's also amateur eyes like ours watching practice, and we're not seeing the same thing that what O'Connell's looking at. As far as timing and reads and stuff.
Yeah.
Granted, even what they're seeing, you got to see it live. So you're going to see this preseason. They got to handle the preseason differently because Darnold or McCarthy have to play you can't just send Nick Mullins out in the preseason, at least on my opinion, and have Nick Mullins take all the preseason snaps and have these two sit back and then figure it out when the season starts. And if you put in Darnold or you put in J.J. McCarthy, I think you need the starting offensive line in front of them. You need everybody, but you don't put Jefferson out there. You don't put Aaron Jones out there. But your linemen, I think, have to start. And it is something the Vikings under this organization, this group under O'Connell has not done. And I think they got to treat the preseason a little differently this year.
I think, excuse me, Darnold suffers from his last name. I mean, darn, he's old. I mean, and that's not a good thing in society these days. Apparently, you can't be old and be effective. Oh God, what am I referring to?
He hasn't gotten old yet, but he's
no. But that you may say that JJ's got a hip and happening name. You got Darnold. It just doesn't sound right. Can you get behind a guy's name's Darnold? But I guess the Vikings fans will have to. I'm just kidding, just messing around. A little other news that kind of popped up here late in the week, and I want to know if you think there has any veracity, is that the Vikings are rumored to be signing Cam Akers and bringing him back, and it'll probably maybe it already happened this morning. Charlie Walters first said something about it, and Charlie is he's always got his rumor column, but I saw it picked up elsewhere. Is they say, I think if he passes a health test, whatever you call it, what do you call it? Thank you. For his Achilles, that they'll sign him, because I thought, you obviously Kevin O'Connell liked him, brought him in last year, and I think he was just starting to feel his own when he went down with that Achilles a week after Kirk did. And there's a Kirk reference. So what do you think? You hear anything on that? And what does it have any legs, so to speak?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't be some earth-shattering signing. It would be a.
It is in this off season, in this dead time.
It would be a 1 year, really, really, really prove it. Not much, no guarantees. Bring them to camp, because their top 2 running backs are set. You got Jones, you got Chandler, and then after that you got Nwangu.
You got the guy that drafted last year, McBride.
Miles Gaskin is a guy that's I think he was with the Rams too. But Akers is a guy. He's still young. You look at him and you think, all he's been through, you're thinking this is some like 30-year-old back that's trying to hang on. He's 25 years old.
Wow.
I think he just turned 25 years old.
Jones is older than he is, isn't he?
Oh yeah, he's 4 or 5 years older than he is. But this is a guy who tore his Achilles in 2021, did something that nobody's ever done, and came back in 5 months and played in the postseason, and helped him win a Super Bowl. O'Connell's offensive coordinator with the Rams at the time. They bring him here whenever they were getting tired of Madison putting the ball on the ground. He clearly had more instincts than Madison. Holds on to the ball better than Madison did. So yeah, there's a connection there. There's a trust there that you bring him to camp. But I don't think he makes the team, because
really?
He tore his other Achilles last year. He's coming back from that. And you tear 2. I know they were different Achilles, but you tear 2 of those in 3 years. It's hard to if he doesn't become the number 3 back, to bring him in, on the roster. I don't think, but who knows? He comes in, and I don't know what he can show at this point. Obviously, he came back in 5 months, but that was the playoffs, and he came in, and he, do you bring a guy back like that, and then you can't overwork him in training camp? So I don't know. It's a strange situation. I could see it happening, but I also not convinced that. Certainly not convinced that he'd make the team. If
that's too bad.
Chance. I mean, and he's also one of those. And this is an added bonus. It's not something they make a decision on, but he's a good character, good personality guy,
right?
Good in the locker room, and that's always. And so is Jones, and so that helps.
Yeah, it's too bad, because I like the way he came in and really helped the team last year. I mean, there was enough for, it wasn't earth shattering, but it was a decided improvement of what was happening in the running back position before that point. So it was, at first I thought, why are they doing this? And then all of a sudden, yeah, I can see why they're doing it. I'd love for it to work out for them. Just bring some depth that you can count on, some veteran depth if anything happens at that position, because we certainly know Aaron Jones has been hurt in the past too. Knock on wood.
Go ahead. And Aaron Jones is not a guy that's going to come in and be a workhorse. So, they have tight. So there is an opening for a third guy.
Yeah,
I think as horrendous as their running game was last year, and maybe one of these times when probably wouldn't be able to share it, but when O'Connell does some of these off the record things with the media, I just what was it about Alexander Madison staying with him as long as they did, and force feeding the fact that he was I could see going into this season, you weren't going to pay that money for Dalvin Cook. So he got his shot. He proved he was not, a number 1 back. But they just stuck with it so long. Whenever you'd see like Akers come in and have a little pop, and certainly when you saw Chandler at the end of the year, and finally, like I think with 2 or 3 games left, Chandler becomes, the number 1 back, and it was a difference.
Yeah.
So there was a blind spot there last year that didn't make sense to me.
Interesting. Yeah, you'll have to ask him about that and never share it with us. That'll be great, Mark, when you do that.
That'd be really good. Yeah, maybe I'll drop hints. A little birdie told me.
There you go. All right, let's take a quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to start our training camp preview, and we're going to start winding down with some position groups towards camp on the 27th of this month. So we'll take a break. Come on back to Vikings Territory Breakdown. Okay, folks, welcome back to Vikings Territory Breakdown with Mark Craig from the Star Tribune. Mark is so giddy to be back working, covering the Vikings again after his Caddyshack Monsignor moment out east golfing in a torrential downpour. Would you have 3 birdies in a row, and then the heavens opened up and said, "Sorry, we'll have more."
You know how hard it was to stop, but our last hole, I knew it was time to stop when our buddy Roger took a big swing, and his club went about 50 yards down the fairway, and his ball went about 10 yards down the fairway. And I got better it was the Caddyshack moment. And then I chipped on my second shot. I chipped it I hit it pitch shot about
sounds like common
40 feet past. Said, well, I don't have to worry about birdie in this one because now we can go. And I went up and took a swat at it, and it went right in the cup. I had my arms raised about 20 feet from the hole because I knew it was going in. But then it was like you literally could not see. It was raining so hard. And
oh my God!
And there's also a little bit of lightning going on. So another public service announcement: don't do what I did when the lightning is striking around you. And
how dare you? You just published a story in Golf or Minnesota Golfer about not playing in the lightning. What's the matter with you?
Trust me, I was telling the stories about there was a time where it struck the pin, and there were 3 guys with metal spikes, and if you could see where the spider webs out to the guys, it struck the guys and knocked them down, so I'm like, and Roger was ready to leave, and then we finally had to pack it in, but that was rough.
You never talked to me about my experience. I was up at Cragen's one time. We were about to play it, and there was a big cloud bank coming in. We're just standing in the parking lot chatting. All of a sudden, boom! And the concussion from the lightning strike moved me forward. I felt it, and it almost knocked. It didn't knock me over, but I mean, it moved you. You could feel the concussion, and I saw this tree over on the end of the lot, and so I walked it off 70 yards away. Drilled this tree and just took every piece of bark off. It was pretty amazing. So that's that stuff's real too. Anyway, folks are not here for that.
They're here for fireworks and lightning. We'll sprinkle some Vikings in here.
It's pretty exciting stuff, fireworks, lightning. You got to jazz up this off-season doldrums of this, the sport. The NFL can't do it all on their own, but they try. Let's talk about some of the positions that are going on, battles that are happening and players, and we'll start on a little bit with the defense on this side. A lot of changes, a lot of new faces on the defense from last year. So let's start out with the secondary. Mark, who do you see grabbing those 4/5 positions, and what do you see it looking like for the 2024 Vikings?
Yeah, they had this guy named Harrison Smith. I think he might start. He might be a starter. Now, Harrison Smith and Bynum start at safety. Metellus played 94% of the snaps last year. And I think that's because they didn't have enough corners. He was kind of a nickelback / linebacker / safety. I don't think, Metellus gives him a hell of a lot. He's a heck of a weapon, but I don't think he plays as much this year, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, him at...
Really? Why?
Well, I'm saying him at 94% of the snaps is probably...
I see, yeah.
You probably want him in that 80% or so because, Metellus is not he's not a real strong coverage guy. So the longer he's on the field, I think the more you're able to isolate him or get him in spots where it's not advantageous to the defense. You want to use him probably in more selective, and then it becomes an advantage more for the defense. So I
like kind of like the Harrison Smith for Zimmer was. He could that Swiss Army knife. He could put him in different.
Yeah, but I mean, Metellus, as good as he is, didn't have the skill and talent just the God-given abilities that Harrison had, especially when he first came out.
Mhm.
Hence, that's why Harrison's a first-round pick, and Metellus was, I think, a fourth or fifth round pick. Corner, where one of the reasons you're able to probably play him less is there's a lot of question marks because you get Shaquille Griffin. He's going to start out as one of the starting outside corners. Are you getting? He'll be 29 in late July. Is he the guy? Can he recapture what he was? He was a Pro Bowl player, a quality player in Seattle. Then he goes and gets a big deal in Jacksonville. Hurts his back in 2022, I believe it was. He says he never fully recovered. So Jacksonville releases him. He goes on to Houston, and they had that great defense last year. Plays 10 games, starts 6. They don't like what they see. They cut him. He goes to Carolina. He plays, I think, 3 games with 1 start. They didn't like him enough to bring him back. So the Vikings, being very desperate at that position, they go out and sign him. And, so now the story he's telling is that he never fully recovered from his back. So he went into the 2023 season not in the best of shape, didn't play up to his standards. And then, and we'll give him the benefit of the doubt for now. Okay, he's still young enough to recapture Pro Bowl form, but, we're not just going to assume that, because a lot of times these guys, they tell themselves that, the reason I wasn't this isn't because I fell off physically and I just, not going to be able to get back up to. You can't turn back the clock hands of time. It's because of the injury. Well, we'll see. He's got to prove that on the field. So, but at least starting out, he's your guy. That's your one of your outside corners, and then Byron Murphy becomes your nickel, your slot cornerback, which is basically a starter because you're going to use him, 75, 80% of the time, probably, if not more. And he's a guy that needs to prove can he stay healthy? Because, when he came over from Arizona, he had hurt his back, didn't have surgery, but hurt his back and was available for not much. And then he did okay, didn't do great for the Vikings last year, but then he hurt his knee and missed the last 2 or 3 games. So, will he be available for the whole season? And then the other outside spot is where it's going to be really fun to watch in camp because you have so many different guys that have potential, but they got to either stay healthy or they got to realize their potential. And that's Mekhi Blackman, which I think for most of OTAs, Mekhi Blackman, second-year guy, was kind of that starter on the outside. He started well as a rookie last year, and I think he got worse as the year went on for whatever reason. Then Andrew Booth. I mean, we've been talking about Andrew Booth for seems like forever, but he's only going into his 3rd season, and this is a make or break year. If Andrew Booth keeps doing what he either you're hurt or you're not able to surpass anyone ahead of you, he's not going to be on this team next year. So this is a big year for him, and he does have talent. It's just never been able to surface, whether it's injuries or whatever. Caleb Evans, this guy probably has more raw skill than Booth. Has a better, longer body than Booth, but he got benched twice last year in Flores' defense. He still has promise. Is he a guy? Plus, he's had some concussions. And then the other one that would be real interesting to watch is Kyrie Jackson, the 4th-round pick. He's like a 6'4", 200 and some pound guy. He could, really, really, if he's good, he's going to look real good because he'll just be able to smother guys. But how good is he? If he was really, really good, he'd probably be in the 1st round. But that has to play out. So that's your starters, and so there's a lot to like, especially at safety. There's a lot of question marks at corner, and I wouldn't be surprised. And Jeff Diamond and I talk about this quite a bit. Is that that they need to bring in another veteran corner. He's like, what are they waiting for? They need one more guy that they could get for 1 year at $10 million, like Stephon Gilmore, Xavier Howard. Howard might cost you a little bit more. J.C. Jackson's still out there. Patrick Peterson's still out there, but I think I wouldn't go out and get Patrick Peterson as great as he was in the locker room. I think his time has passed, but maybe a Gilmore. I just feel like they need another veteran to bring in to kind of, especially when you don't have a Daniil Hunter anymore in the pass rush. What's it going to hurt?
What we talk about these guys like he's going to be the starter, Shaquille Griffin, blah blah blah, and we talk. I think maybe it's just me, but you get in your head, okay, they're the starters, they're logged in. That brings them to a certain level of performance, but it's not necessarily true. We might be having starters at a B or a C level or a D level. I mean, where is this group of quarterbacks if in fact those guys that you mentioned just become the guys, which is a good chance they will? How do you rate them? I mean, are we aspiring to just okay secondary, or is it going to be NFL quality? Is it going to be something you can expect them week in and week out to really do a great job, or just to survive?
Well, when your bumper falls off and you don't want to take it to the shop, you just want to kind of get you got to say you got to.
I'm doing it today with my kid's car.
All right, so your kid's car is what, probably 12 years old, and you're like, I don't want to put any money into this, or what else am I going to do? So you get that gray duct tape, and you're going like this, trying to, right now that's kind of where they're at. I mean, Shaquille Griffin to a team that has two established corners, he would be, frankly, garbage. To the Vikings, he's like, hey, this is he's like Eddie on Christmas Vacation going out to the curb and going, this is a good quality item. He's gonna reuse this. There you go. And so yeah, this is not an ideal situation, but there is some stuff there that they can, with some tape and spit and polish or whatever you call that stuff, get put it together. But no, this is not like I'm trying to think of I've been away from the NFL, flushing the NFL out of my brain for so long. But whoever the top cornerback team is, it's not that. It's not we're going to trot out this guy on this side, this guy on this side, and we're going to bring in a great third corner and shut everybody down.
They really need some of these younger guys to learn quickly and step up. I mean, ultimately, aren't these guys like Griffin and him a placeholder till someone can come in and take over for them? Maybe not this year, but in the very near future, because
sure,
you can't live with these guys as your top end. So, and that would just be more of it a Gilmore. I mean, I'm with you. If you think you got a chance this year, you better go do like the Timberwolves and go out and get somebody that can take you to that next step. The Vikings are not that kind of team, are they? Where one draft choice or a couple draft choices or free agent signings is going to put them over the top this year.
Well, I mean, Gilmore comes with some, he would come with his own set of question marks because he's 33 years old.
Right.
Xavier Howard is 30 years old. So yeah, it's one of those where you just, you don't get a chance every year to replenish, 22 spots at the A level. And that's what makes it fun to, as you watch a team get pieced together. It's also why when you miss on a draft like
Lewis,
like they did in 2022,
yeah.
Whenever you take those corners and you're like, okay, we should be set. Andrew Booth should be a starter, and it doesn't happen. Then it's like, man, now you got to move on and do other things, and then hope that give him a year or 2 or 3 to prove himself. And then when he doesn't, you have to go back to that spot. And by that time, maybe you're just plugging, fingers in the bridge. It's as the water's pouring out. So that's kind of where I sense they are at corner. But in saying that, these guys aren't the same from year to year. So a Mekhi Blackman could definitely be a lot different than what we saw as a rookie. Andrew Booth is, it's getting close. Personally, I probably have written him off, but there's still, he gets one more year to show it or not. And then there's absolutely no reason to bring him back next year if he hasn't done anything to prove it this year. And Caleb Evans, I liked him, but I think the defense might have been too complex or something because he was in Flores' doghouse more than once last year.
Hmm.
So.
Well, one guy that we haven't mentioned in the secondary is, and we've kind of made reference to him, is Lewis Seen. This might be his make or break year with the team. He was drafted. They traded away and went, in the first round 2 years ago, 3 years ago, is it now? And picked him up, and so we are all excited about him for a Georgia Bulldog from that great defense. And then he got hurt, and has only played special teams with only very, maybe 10 plays in the actual defense since he's been here. Is this the year that is this his final year, one way or the other, with the Vikings?
Yeah. I feel differently about him just because I feel like next year I'm not saying he can just slough off this year, but with Harrison Smith, I would assume clearly being in his last year now, which is not a rock solid assumption, but I would assume Harrison Smith is in his final year. So the opportunities for Lewis Seen right now are not going to be a whole lot. So to me, if I'm them, I would not get rid of him and then have an opening at safety. I would want him to compete with Josh Metellus and for that other safety spot, or whoever they bring in for that, or Jay Ward or whatever. So I guess I'm not ready to call a make it break it on him. It sure would be nice to see him live up to his God-given physical skills that he has. That this is what makes it draft so interesting, is that you put at a combine, you put Lewis Seen and next to Josh Metellus. You sit there and you look at him, you weigh him, you measure him, and you have him run, and you do this and that. It's like, one was born to, it looks like he was built to play safety. The other's like, well, he's a mid-round, late day two guy. But when you put him on the field, it's the complete opposite. Metellus will play way above his skill or his, physical skills, and then Lewis Seen plays below his skills. And so, I would think that it helps. This is year 2 for Flores to get his coaching into Seen. So maybe they use him a little bit more. Just in some way to kind of like, hey, we may need this guy next year. Let's not just give him another red shirt or just keep him on the bench. Get something out of him.
What is that? Why Harrison Smith is still around? Why did they want? Flores obviously likes him. Great part of his defense. He still has the skills to play. He still wanted to. He came back, took a pay cut, but is it because they know they don't have? They're just kind of bridging till the next year where someone else can grab that spot, and Seen hasn't shown that he can do it, or so they're going to have to maybe go for a next year, maybe go for a free agent safety to replace him when they have more free agent cap room. Why is he back? Why aren't they? When this year is, I don't think it's going to be the year where they're battling for the title. It's a building year to the next year when maybe McCarthy and blah 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 and everything happens. But why is Harrison just a bridge?
Well, you don't say this about too many of NFL players. I think he's year 13.
So I was going to say 12 or 13. Yeah.
You don't say this about too many players, but he got to make the decision himself. He got to make the decision. He still has enough to offer to the team. I think if you're asking why are you back, why is he back? That's a question more for Harrison Smith. It's like, obviously he loves football. He's not, probably not doing it for the money. He's doing it because he loves football, and he knows that once you quit, you're done. And he still has something to offer. So when he decided he wanted to come back, the Vikings are going, okay. Our corners are young and either inexperienced or have something to prove, like Shaquille Griffin. Why not have him? Because you don't have to be great in this league to make the playoffs, certainly. And once you get into the playoffs, who knows what can happen? So, they're trying to stay competitive. It's not just shut it down and we're just going to be good next year. but I don't think he's part of their future next year. So, and the other thing is Lewis Seen. Maybe this is a different situation. If Lewis Seen was an All-Pro, came in and he was
Right.
like, oh my God, he beats out. First thing he couldn't do was beat out Cam Bynum. Cam Bynum is an overachiever that none of us thought. We thought he was the bridge to Lewis Seen, and then he came in. It was like Lewis Seen couldn't beat him out. So it gets to where with drawing blank what I was saying, but I would keep him around another year because first thing he couldn't do was beat out Cam Bynum, and now he's not going to beat out Harrison Smith this year. But he could be a guy that you could bring along again, and at least give him one more year.
That's interesting. That's the most positive thing I've said about Lewis Seen since he got here, and well, a year after, whatever.
I feel it's like one of those where you wait in line for something, and you're at an hour, and you go, if you'd have left after 15 minutes, you've been okay, but I've been here for an hour. I might as well wait another half hour. And it's like, with Lewis Seen, you're like, why get rid of him? Say Harrison Smith, assuming he does not come back in 2025, and I just wouldn't go, Lewis Seen didn't do anything this year again, I'm going to cut him. I certainly wouldn't be, giving him any fifth round options or anything like that.
You need bodies, that's for sure.
Well, you just need. I don't know if the light bulb comes on for him. I don't know. The guy did have an injury, then he got beat out by an overachiever, and I don't think he ever picked up. Strike one was he didn't pick up Donatel's defense. Then strike two he got hurt, and then strike three was like. Bynum got established. You had Harrison Smith. You had Josh Metellus step up. There was no spot for him.
Yeah.
And maybe there'll be a spot for him next year. I don't know. We got to see what happens this year first.
We'll have to wait and see on that. So in the meantime, we will take another break, and we'll be back to talk about. We'll go to the offensive side of the ball and talk about the offensive line. There's plenty to talk about there coming into camp. So come on back to Vikings Territory Breakdown. Okay, folks, welcome back to Vikings Territory Breakdown. Mark Craig from the Star Tribune is here as always. Mark, the offensive line, I know you're partial to these guys just because you played a little bit of it. Didn't you play a little bit of offensive line in high school?
Slightly lower level, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I like talking about receivers because I played from our offense, it was a tight end, but I like to call it wide receiver. But my wife prefers the name tight end, so about me. So.
Were they given $35 million a year back then when you played?
Not quite, not quite. No, I did not see any of that. If I certainly wouldn't have been a pay for production, I wouldn't have gone that route because there was a running offense. Passes were few and far between. Excuse me. Anyway, the offensive line, what are we? Are we status quo from last year? There's some new faces, but there's a lot of the similar faces. There's some good players. There's some questionable players. Do we have any interesting position battles here? Are they all set? What do you see for the offensive line, which is a big deal for this crew, especially with someone like Sam Darnold, and especially with if it's JJ McCarthy, a young guy, you don't want to get him the hell beat out of him like Kirk did from time to time back there. Another Kirk reference.
Yeah, I think when you look at the tackles, I mean, there's certainly no competition for the starting tackles. In fact, Christian Darrisaw, 25 years old, 39 starts. When Trent Williams gets ready to ever gives up, I could see Darrisaw stepping into an all-pro form for years. I think the next challenge for Christian Darrisaw is to play an entire season. Don't have those like in 2021. I think he missed 5 games, and then he missed 3 games, and he missed 2 last year. Try to be that guy that it starts every game. And this guy could be. He's already really good, but he could be elite. He could be the best. He's just got that ability, and I think that's a great thing to have when you're pairing a J.J. McCarthy, whether it's this year or next year, with a 25, 26-year-old left tackle. That's phenomenal. Brian O'Neill is going into what year?
6, 7.
Yeah, it'd be 89 starts to go. I think he's heading into year 7. He's 29. He'll be 29 in September. So I think the challenge for him is to not, still realize that you're in your prime and that you can still go forward. Sometimes with Brian, maybe it's the Achilles he had at the end of the 2021 season. Last year, it just seemed like there were lapses where, it's like you're better than that. You should be better than that all the time. But he's also got some great pass rushers in Detroit. He's got that Montez Sweat that showed up in the middle of the season last year in Chicago, who was a handful for Brian in that game. Those guys are good. Those are I put A on your tackles. You got an A tackle set, and I like the swing tackle is Quesenberry, who's going to be 34. I liked him whenever he had to start. He's a veteran guy. I think how many years? I wrote this down. He's like 30 starts. He's going into year 12, so I like having him. But then you got the 6th round pick, who's kind of interesting. He's being groomed to be the next swing tackle. That Walter Rouse that went to Stanford, went to Oklahoma last year and did really well. So that's good. I like what you got at tackle. But interior, it's like, man, it's the kind of the same faces. It's the same issues. It's the, do they have the ability to move people off the ball? Do they have the ability to work together and, keep the front of the pocket clean? I don't know. I think Blake Brandel, it looks to me like it's his job to lose, which is a little surprising because Dalton Reisner was a guy that I think came in and helped him out last year. But I think Dalton Reisner has got to beat out Blake Brandel. I think they like Brandel going into this. And I still feel like if Ed Ingram on the right side, right guard, doesn't I still think there's a possibility that if Brandel and Reisner are playing well, and this is in the joint practices primarily because who knows if they'll be in preseason games. But if those guys take off, I can see Brandel going to the right side, Reisner going to the left, and Ingram being the third guy out. So those are your three. That's a competition that I don't think is just two guys at left tack or left guard. I think it's all three, those top guards. And then at center, it's Garrett Bradbury. He didn't live up to whatever year he's 60 years. He's got 71 starts. He's not the number one pick like he should have been, but he's not a bust either. They can win with him, but you bring in a Dan Feeney, who's a veteran. At 65, he's got 65 career starts. He had with 4 teams. 57 of those was from 2017 to 2020 with the Chargers. So to me, it's like if Bradbury slips a little bit, or you just don't feel like, hey, we need something more there. We need more power there. This Feeney, I could see him stepping in, because they went out and got him for a reason. It wasn't. I don't necessarily think it was just to back up Bradbury. I think it might have been to push Bradbury. So it's one of those where I love the tackles, but the interior, it's as long as you have some weaknesses in there, or it's sometimes, I'm not saying the tackles don't matter, but offensive line has to be good across the board, and that's why that's to me is the biggest reason. I know Jared Goff is good. I know that the Lions have some really good skill players. I know their defense was playing better, but the reason that they stepped up and became the Detroit Lions of last year starts with that offensive line, and they're good 1 to 5. They got the best right tackle in football and Sewell, and then the rest of them were solid, and that's what the Vikings need to put together.
Yeah, we suffer from one coach who always wanted to draft defense, and the other one who likes receivers. Maybe now I don't know. It's like this team as a whole has neglected the offensive line over the years, and time again we see that someone who doesn't, it's going to be well for you. The Cowboys, they did it, and they have a great offensive line. The Lions now did it the way you just described, and that's the way you win in this league, ain't it?
Well, yeah, but the Vikings, they got a number one pick. You got a number one draft pick at left tackle. They got a number one draft pick at center. Got a number a second round draft pick at right tackle, and a second round pick at right guard. So they've put. I mean, it took Spielman a long time to to get some of these pieces in place, and whenever now that they're maturing, he's gone. But it's. I remember for how many years it was always talking about the tackles. Got to get a tackle. And then Matt Khalil was drafted in high, top 5, and he did well his first year, and then just kind of regressed every year after that. But they've invested in their offensive line. It's just
they haven't been the right picks.
It's just getting it all connected and meshed together, and let's see if they can do it.
So what is it then? Is this unit going to take a step forward, or are they just going to be as good as they were last year, and so occasionally struggle but generally be okay?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it does have to play out. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, Garrett Bradbury's going to take some big leap and Ed Ingram's going to take some big leap. Ed Ingram has gotten a lot of experience, and then they proved they could win with him as a rookie in 2021. But there's just a lot of breakdowns, too many breakdowns for a guy that you could say, well, this is going to be this line is going to be really good. I just a big question mark. Those 3 on the inside, just too big a question mark for me. And when you have you have Darnold and you have or a rookie quarterback, it was tough with Kirk because Kirk was even though he's a veteran quarterback, Kirk was a guy that stayed in the pocket a little too long, or if things broke down in front of him, he didn't really overcome it. He didn't whitewash it or like make it go away.
I don't think he moved in the pocket moved forward and well enough. I mean,
yeah, I mean, Kirk when is you got to really protect Kirk for it to really work, and a lot of times they didn't.
Well, hopefully they can this year. We need to step up a little bit and maybe finally get solidified where you can count on them from year to year, and just because they're going to have to replace Bradbury at some point. At some point, he's going to start diminishing, and I think he's only as good as those 2 guards around him. So something's got to give this year. But I'll give you one more bonus question on our way out. Speaking of offense, the next installment of Netflix NFL series begins on July 10th. And it's about wide receivers, and it features Justin Jefferson. Are you excited to read? It's interesting. Kirk was in the original one, and we learned so much more about Kirk, the person, that we really didn't know. And I think it was good for him and his reputation. But Jefferson, everybody knows him and loves him. And now what we're going to have to watch there is watch him, how frustrated he will be sitting on the sidelines for 8 weeks. Maybe there'll be some insight into what you have said on this show many times, is that Jefferson, they really erred, or they erred on the side of caution with him. Maybe something about that comes out, holding him out that many.
Well, yeah, I hadn't really thought of that, but I'd still say that they thought they were going to beat the Bears without him. They assumed that they could beat the Bears. That Monday night was a Monday night game at home.
Yeah,
right, going into the bye week, and it was like a 12-10 game or something, 15-12, whatever it was. And then it was kind of like, I understand you got to err on the side of caution, but it's like, this is a big. Can't just assume that what they had was going to beat the Bears. And right. I was like, he should play. Even I don't care about the bye week. If he's ready, don't rest him only because of the bye week. Don't go, well, he's ready, but we're going to give him one more week. This was an important game, and as it turned out, it certainly was a big game, and that they just couldn't function and score. And so, it'll be fun to watch that. It's going to be certainly going to have a different feel to it than the quarterback. And I think what they did with that, picking there was only 3 of them, right?
I think there's 4. Yeah, there's Almont St. Brown, Jefferson, and I don't know who the other two are.
Well, I mean, the quarterback one was Cousins, Mahomes, Mariota.
Yep, those three. That's it.
Yeah, I think there were only three, and what a nice mix. And obviously Peyton Manning being involved makes it great. The access makes it great. But with Kirk, it was just guys in different. Obviously Mahomes being the best player in the league, and Kirk being a veteran that
much maligned.
Well, we just saw like how much it meant to him, and then Mariota, we saw how much. At least that's the impression I got, was how much it didn't really mean much to him.
Right.
To the level of a Kirk Cousins for sure.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. So we'll have to check that out and chat about it in the future. But until that happens, we'll come back and we'll talk some more about this. Mark, thanks for your insight. Mike Woldham, thanks for producing. Joe Johnson, thinking about your brother. Thanks for putting us here. And thanks to all you folks for coming back and checking us out after our hiatus. So we'll be back next week, hopefully to do it again and do some more preview before camp. So come on back and check us out. And until that point, thanks and Skol. Joe must be, or Mike must be busy. So,
yeah. I mean, we could even do it later. Say July.
Skol.